Perfect. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming. Super excited for you to be here today. This is our first ever California Alliance session, Data and the At-Risk Student. And my name is Sarah Marion. I'm the account executive for all the schools across California. We have Andrew Papura, who is the CEO of Jax Consulting, and Sean Spear, also the VP of Education. And we are going to be your hosts for all things student success today. We only have about 25, 30 minutes. So if you do have questions, I know we're a smaller group than planned, so feel free to either chime into the chat or just speak up as we're going. Okay, so what we are really hoping you'll leave here today with is kind of feeling inspired on how you can create a comprehensive system on how to identify and support at-risk students on Education Cloud or at your institution. And we're going to specifically focus on how to proactively intervene and provide targeted support to students, how to enhance the student success, and then how to also address and better support at-risk students. And I put up here kind of everyone who had accepted the calendar invite. So, don't be shy. If you do see other schools here that you want to connect with, I encourage you to reach out on LinkedIn, or if you want some help facilitating introduction, please feel free to let me know. In addition to kind of learning something new, I really hope that you leave here today with one new connection. All right, so let's dive in. From speaking with schools across California, the common thing that we hear is that most institutions are really being held back by legacy systems. And these disjointed systems are creating silos, and that's impeding transformation, which impacts the student's journey. And at the end of the day, when you have disjointed systems, it also leads to disjointed data. And so it makes it very challenging to have a kind of 360-degree view that's trusted of your student. We also found that a lot of schools, from whether it's the advisors or the student success team, they are supporting students with a lot of sweat equity. There's a lack of automated processes and a lack of self-service capabilities, which results into just a higher workload for the staff, which leads to burnout, but also and kind of impedes that seamless student journey that students really desire. So these are very common things. You might kind of recognize some of these challenges. And I wanted to kind of use our time, more of our time here, to introduce Carissa Johnson, who is the VP of our Provost of Enrollment Management at Golden Gate University, to kind of speak a little bit about why GGU decided to say goodbye to their legacy system and hello to Education Cloud. So with that said, Carissa, I'm going to pass it over to you to give your story.
Thanks, Sarah. We are super duper excited to move into Salesforce. We are one of those institutions with disjointed systems, leading us to the disjointed data, and it does make it quite frustrating for some of our teams to make sure that that student is getting the best experience from start all the way through to graduation. Some of the things that Salesforce has allowed us to do currently is really just kind of trust the system a lot more. It's more reliable than our legacy system was. We have less time, kind of fighting the system for technical problems and going back and seeing why different things didn't route correctly, or, things, leads or applications, students kind of got stuck in the system and were difficult to find. When we launched the first part of Ed Cloud, the team picked it up super duper fast. There was such a small, really just like a really small period of time where we had to train them and retrain them, as opposed to our prior system. It was, sometimes months for a new student or a new person to come in, get them trained on the system, and all of the different manual things that they had to do. Whereas with Salesforce, our folks are picking it up within just a few weeks as opposed to just a few months, minimal training, and really able to just kind of be more happy coming in with their experience. We're finding that students are easier to work with because they do have a much smoother experience on their end as well. So really overall, just a lot of pretty high satisfaction on both ends, which of course makes all the higher ups really happy, because then that leads to, really super solid data. Things like duplicates, things like that are far less in our system because of some of the flexibility that EdCloud has particularly provided for us. One of the biggest things, I think, is just the focusing on, the biggest win, I think, for us is we've got folks like in many other higher ed institutions who have had folks that have been around certain legacy systems for quite some time, and they're typically your most challenging folks, to kind of pick up new systems or new processes. And so I feel like it's a huge win that even our most challenging people are actually pretty excited about the system. They see the value in it, and more importantly, they see that the students, again, are happier and our data is a little bit more transparent across the board.
That's fantastic to hear. Thank you so much, Carissa, for sharing that. So with that said, we're going to talk a little bit about what we have a solution called Data Cloud, how we can go from the education cloud experience that Carissa just highlighted to actually expand it to create intelligent constituent experiences at scale. And what this means is essentially when you're thinking about education cloud, you have the student data in the CRM, but there are sources of data across your campus, like your SIS, your LMS. It can even be a data lake, maybe your Google Cloud Storage, or even your website that is external to Salesforce. And Data Cloud can essentially bring in data from any source into one central place, and then it prepares it. And what I mean by prepare is essentially duplicate records, conflicting constituent records. Students oftentimes have multiple email addresses. They might be known by multiple names or have multiple unique IDs. Data Cloud can take this, all this data, regardless of the format, and standardize it into one data model. And that one data model is then put into Education Cloud. And the impact of that is that higher ed institutions who are leveraging Data Cloud and Education Cloud have the ability to essentially have a comprehensive kind of data model that you can take action on. And specifically for kind of this discussion around student success, what we're going to be doing with the remainder of our time is kind of looking at a student success use case and how harmonizing and centralizing that data with Data Cloud into Education Cloud can help you to have real-time views of your student success. It can help advisors and staff to identify essentially very quickly, because the system's doing it for you, who are the at-risk students, so that you can really focus more of your time on that wraparound care to ensure their success. So with that said, we're going to kind of pivot from here and go in towards the specific use case. And so I'm going to pass this over to Andrew to kind of lead us into this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew. I'm the CEO of Jax Consulting. So I'm actually going to show you a very specific use case that we developed for student success. We did this through our partnership with Instructure Canvas. And this can be used with any LMS system, SIS system. So whether or not you have Moodle, Canvas, Ellucian, Anthology, they can all be used for this. And what we do is we bring the data into Data Cloud and into Salesforce CRM. And what we do is we predict who are the at-risk students. And so we do this using a set of rules that we have in Data Cloud, statistical analysis, machine learning, and the important part, which is doing the integrations that make the structure of the data align with being able to do that. So what happens when you do this type of project is it allows you to do early interventions to figure out who your at-risk students are. And so the use case I'm going to show you is about student retention, but this exact same use case that I'm showing you has other applications. So for example, if you need to bring in your data about students that have taken nursing licensing exams in the past and use your historical data to predict students that are at risk of passing their nursing exam to get their license at the end of your program, that can be another application to the same use case that I'm showing you. So the benefits of this are proactive student interventions, enhancing your retention rates, and the return on investment for this is I'm going to show you some cited information, but the early intervention for students can increase your retention rates by 10 to 20%. And that obviously has an impact on revenue, but you can do a business use case about the impact on revenue, but it has a long-term impact, right? So if you are increasing your retention rates and it will increase your reputation, those students will become alumni and donors. And so the return on investment continues over a long period of time. Next slide, please. So where does Data Cloud fit into the student success process? So I'm going to try to make this a little simpler for you because we talk a lot about data cloud, data strategy, and the unified student profile. So in the past, a lot of systems were built on what's called a transactional database. And so transactional databases have a lot of overhead to do computation power. And so in Data Cloud, it's a data structure similar to a data lake, and it has a lot less overhead and can run a lot more efficiently. So when you take your disparate systems, your SIS system, your LMS system, they all have different data models, they all have different external IDs, and so what you have to do is join your data. Now, if you do that into a data lake, that just becomes another disparate system that you have, right? So now you have another system that you have to run projects on to integrate it and make that actionable within your other systems that you're actually doing your business workflow with, right? So a lot of times you build a data lake and you only do reporting off of it. So with the inclusion of Data Cloud, it sits inside of the Salesforce platform, right? And it's part of the Salesforce ecosystem. And so when you create this data lake, you can then use it seamlessly in the Salesforce modules, in the AI prediction module, in the Salesforce Education Cloud module, in Tableau CRM, and you can have real-time integrations, AI running off of it to do machine learning models, analytics, and hyper-personalization in your business workflows. So it transforms Salesforce and your business workflows from being systems that to having a system work with you and for you, rather than it being a system you're just working on. Next slide, please. And so I really like to include this slide because this kind of shows the sheer quantity of disparate systems that you may have at your university. And so, you know, we're talking about mostly the LMS system and the SIS system and CRM system today, but you may also have all these additional systems, and they actually have a lot of powerful information about your students that you may be able to utilize if you bring them in to unify the student profile. For example, if you have a student that has attendance that they're missing classes, but then you also have in their housing system that they've moved out of their housing, that could be potentially an alert to data analysis that there's something going on with that student. But a lot of times we don't have that data at our disposal for these kinds of processes. And so that's just one example. Okay, so the return on investment, what I talked on earlier, I've cited some information in here about the importance of early interventions. And the topic is about how much you can improve your student success process from doing early interventions, not waiting until the students are having problems in their grades, for example. And the one I really, really, really want to highlight you to is the one on the very far left. So please come in, look at the slide afterwards, and look at the citations. But the one on the left talks about mental health issues being the primary reason for students dropping out of college. 64% of students who leave school cite mental health as the primary concern. And so the problem with that is if people are struggling from anxiety, if they're struggling from depression, they may also be the students who are less likely to proactively reach out to your support services. So that's why it's important to utilize data, try to identify who these at-risk students are and make it actionable in the system so that you can try to proactively take action before they're starting to have issues at the university. All right, so I'm going to take over the screen sharing. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can.
All right. So unfortunately, I can't give you a very thorough demo of student success. And so I encourage you, if you do see something that you want to see more information about, please reach out to your account executive for Salesforce, and they can help schedule a very thorough demo of student success. Because what I'm trying to do is just show you an example of how the calculations from Data Cloud can make things actionable within your Salesforce system. Okay, so I'm logged into Connected University, and this is a demo environment that we've built. And we've built the integration with Canvas and with Ellucian to demonstrate an example of this student success use case. And so logged in, I'm actually Adam Ferris, and so I'm an academic advisor. And so as an academic advisor, I actually have 370 students. And so that's a lot of students to be able to figure out what I need to do each day, who I need to pay attention to. And so really what I need is I need Salesforce to tell me which students need my attention. And so scrolling down, what I'm going to see is 2 student alerts in my system right away. And both of these alerts came from Data Cloud, from the machine learning algorithms that are running on the LMS and SIS data and Slack engagement data. And it gave me an alert for Sophia Sanders that's saying that she's an at-risk student, and and also another one that says she has high class absences. And that might be part of the reason why she's an at-risk student. But as an advisor, what I can do now is click on Sophia and see what's going on with her. The first things that I see when I go to her student profile is there's a lot of data on here. And it's because Connected University has gone through the process of integrating the SIS, the LMS, and so we have that data accessible in her Student 360. And so this data right here is in Data Cloud, the GPA information, the absences, and the LMS data, and course Slack engagement data. That's in Data Cloud, and it's been put into Tableau CRM from Data Cloud, and it's showing some reports and analytics directly in her Student 360 in Salesforce. And so I can see that she has a high GPA. So her being an at-risk student is not something that's obvious to me as her academic advisor. I may not have found her as a high-risk student from just looking at the reports and analytics I had about her. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the predictions that Einstein Discovery made for me, and it's going to show me that she only has a 60% likelihood to persist as a student. And that's pretty low. And so why, if she has this high GPA, why does she have a low likelihood to persist? And so it's telling me what are the factors that attributed to her percentage. And so you can see she has course Slack messages is one of the top predictors. They're very low. She has high class absences, high advisor visits, and then there's some suggested improvements where it suggests increasing her course Slack messages because Slack is being used as an engagement channel for each one of her courses. And then it said to decrease her class absences and increase her LMS logins. So the overall theme of what Einstein is telling me is that she's having a lot of absences of her courses and she's having low engagement. And if I look at another dashboard provided to me on her student profile, it supports that case. If I'm looking at this dashboard right here, I can see how she compares against other students like her. And she's the yellow polygon. And I can see that comparatively to the average of the other students, she does have a low engagement and she does have a very high absences, but she has a high GPA. But the thing about this is that she may have a high GPA right now, but we've proactively found that something may be going on with her at the university. And so we want to take action on her before her GPA starts to suffer. And when I go down and look at her assignments, it even supports the case further. It's showing that in the last month, she's had some late assignments been turned in, but now in the last few days, she's actually been missing and failing assignments. And that supports the case even further. So something might be going on with Sophia. It just hasn't really shown up in her grades yet. So what I've done as her advisor is I want to take some proactive steps to make some interventions into Sophia, just in case something's going on with her. And so what I'm going to do is I want to pull up her academic advisory record case. And this is a case that we leave open in Salesforce for her first year because she's in something called a first year student success plan. And so in student success, we have a concept of care plans. And this is something that we use for students in the student journey where they have a template of goals, milestones, benefits, and tasks that they need to complete. And so she's in a first-year student success plan as a first-year student to help make sure she successfully matriculates into the university, does what she needs to do within that first year, which is the most critical year for a student to make sure that they don't drop. And so she has some goals in here for completing her general education requirements, earning 15 credit hours, declaring a major, and she has some tasks in here that she's completed because they were part of her original matriculation process. And so two things that I've added her to as her advisor is two benefits that weren't originally in her care plan, which is a wellness support program and a peer mentoring program. So what I've done as her advisor is enroll her into these two programs so that she can get some additional support that may be personalized to her. So she'll end up meeting with her wellness advisor, developing a wellness plan. He'll be able to do some analysis of her and produce a personalized program for her. And she'll have to, she'll do a 60-minute wellness coaching session. But I'm also decided to put her in peer mentoring using the peer mentoring module of Salesforce Student Success. And in that, she'll have a series of tasks that she'll then do with a peer mentor who I found for her, named Riley. And so now that I've decided to enroll her in these programs, it's time for me to communicate that with her. I need to send her an email. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is go back to her Student 360 record, and I'm going to pull open another feature of Salesforce that's using Salesforce Data Cloud, and it's called Copilot. So I don't know if you've seen or heard of Copilot, but it's the generative AI feature of Salesforce. It's very similar to ChatGPT, but it's personalized to the data that you have within your Salesforce system. And I've already sort of set up the prompt so that I could be quick during demoing. But what I've done is I've asked it to draft an email for me to let Sophia know that I'd like to have an advising appointment with her. And so Copilot has drafted the email for me, but I could use Einstein to do a lot of the information I just took you through. When I pulled up her 360-degree record, because it has the data in Data Cloud of her trending data, I could have asked Einstein for some of the analysis that I did. And if I'm using knowledge within Salesforce and I have knowledge articles, I could have asked Einstein to recommend next best steps for me as her advisor for the situation that she's in with this alert for being an at-risk student. So what are the things I should do for the student? And Einstein Copilot can actually help me with what I should do as an advisor and give me some recommendations. So going back to the email, when I go to send this, and I send the email, it goes ahead and I have my email account connected to Salesforce, and so it is able to send it directly from my email account, whether I have Microsoft 360 or Google. And so I can make edits to it before I send it, just in case I don't like the language that the AI bot created. If I want to make it a little warmer, I can modify it. And then once I sent this message, one of the beautiful things is it shows up in the timeline. So I can look at these past messages that I've sent Sophia as I'm sending the messages out through email, and it's showing me that they're unopened. So let's say, for example, I've sent her an email, and in my alerts inside of my homepage, one of those tasks that she's assigned becomes overdue. And I get an alert as her academic advisor that she hasn't completed something that I've asked her to do, specifically scheduling an appointment. And so I can then come to her Student 360 profile in her timeline, see that she hasn't opened her email, and that becomes another data point for the Data Cloud module to find an at-risk student. If they're not opening the emails within their CRM, that's another data point where you're seeing that something is going on with Sophia, and that can feed into the at-risk student data.
You got about 3 minutes, Andy.
Okay, perfect. So just very quickly, I'm going to be very quick on the next part. I'm going to pull open what this experience looks like for Sophia herself. So I've asked her to schedule an appointment on the student portal. And so the really great benefit of the student portal is this was the same portal that is available in the recruitment and admissions module, right? So what happens in the portal is as the student is going through the application process and matriculates into an actual student, the user experience of the portal changes. So originally it was focused on the application process, and now it's focused on her support services. So all of her support services are in the portal now. If she wasn't reached out to proactively from her advisor, she still has the capability to access all of her support services and even schedule an appointment with them. So when I click on schedule appointment, it's going to show me all of my support my resources that are available to me and who they are. So I have my academic advisor, my wellness advisor, career services. And for the purposes of time, I'm not going to go through the process of actually scheduling the appointment, but she can come in here, have access to the schedule of her support services, schedule an appointment that doesn't conflict with their calendar. All right, so back to our presentation. What does an implementation look like when you're doing these data cloud projects? So I wanted to highlight for you what they look like. So typically what you're doing in the beginning phases of these is you're doing a discovery and planning. You want to have a metric about what is success. A very clear metric is I want to increase retention by 10%. And then you have to define what are the different systems that you're going to integrate with Data Cloud, with Salesforce, with the Education Cloud system. And then you go through the process of configuring it. And then typically what we recommend doing is a pilot program. So you roll it out, you're able to get confidence in the AI models, in the algorithms that you've built for student success to make sure that they're accurately identifying at-risk students. And then you typically then do a full deployment into the institutional-wide system, and then you iterate. The best thing to do is iterate on that, right? So you have built one use case. There's many more. I mentioned the licensing exams as another use case. So you can continue to iterate and get higher return on investment, adjust the model, find new things to identify risk for students, and then put them through your programs that you're running through the student success module.
And so I think I just want to echo something that Andy said there is like, when we implement these projects, they tend to be very iterative. So you really want to, refine the models, work with the models. You're going to get more and more data over time, and you want to keep iterating to improve how you're identifying at-risk students or whatever the use case might be. And as well, like Andy's saying, expanding out the use cases to other areas. So, student retention and at-risk students is one use case, but there are dozens and dozens and dozens that, you could come to mind. And so it's really important to think of this as like, not a one and done, but it's very much an iterative process and an evolving process. So we just highlighted here sort of that as part of the implementation, these are all ongoing monitoring or evolutionary kind of steps in the project that would be ongoing even after an implementation.
Awesome. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Sarah, just to talk about the next session. The only thing I'm going to say is in the next session, what is going to be shown is how to pull Slack into the process we just showed you in Salesforce. And if you want to bring additional parts of her support team into the conversation and swarm on it through Slack, how that can be done. And it ties directly into what was just demoed.
Yeah, that was said beautifully. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We're right at time, but do stay tuned. We're holding the session number 2 of the California Alliance on Thursday, September 26th, same time at 11. So if you're interested, we'll be sending out that invitation. And additionally, regarding a data readiness assessment, that's something that if you are kind of curious to just understand whether or not your institution could go this direction, Jax Consulting provides a data readiness assessment that we can connect you to those resources. So we appreciate everyone's time today. I'll go ahead and let you go. You have a great lunch, and we will be in touch. Take care.